It is crossover Thursday, and we have Locked On Chargers, Locked On Raiders as the Chargers try for a must-win, and the Raiders try to find some life offensively with new offensive coordinator Greg Olson.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into this crossover edition of Locked On Chargers and Locked On Raiders, and thank you to all the everydayers out there for making us your first listen as part of the #1 sports podcast network. Never get tired of saying that, but make sure, as always, you go follow and subscribe for free on the Locked On Chargers and Locked On Raiders YouTube channels, and find them wherever you get your podcasts from. And we have a big one, an AFC West rivalry game with two teams playing for very different things, right? I mean, the Chargers, it is a must-win for them. And for the Raiders, I'm sure they would love a chance to play spoiler. But more than that, listening to you, it's about guys trying to figure out if they're going to be with the team next year, right? And kind of a 6-game audition to show that they're part of whatever the next version of the Raiders looks like. So I think there's a lot to look at in this game, and we're going to get into the biggest stories, the best matchups, and what each of these teams has to do to win this game. But today's episode is brought to you, as crossover Thursdays always are, by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Q, what's up, man? A show we've done many times before in many different situations, and we got another one this weekend.
Yeah, we do, and in different circumstances. The last time we did this, it was early in the season. Both teams were playing for a lot. Now the Chargers are playing for a lot still, and the Raiders are trying to find themselves. And, the audition for the 2026 Raiders starts on Sunday against the Chargers. So if you want to be on this team next year, right, you got to put your best foot forward. That's players and coaches. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, there's a lot on the line for both teams, but they're different reasonings as far as the results of this game.
Absolutely, man. And I think, when Pete Carroll took over, obviously I didn't love it as someone that covers the Chargers, because it meant, they had a real guy in charge and someone that could at least, you could foresee putting something together and kind of bringing them back. And it was probably never a one-year thing, right? And I think a lot of this, the Chargers have had an extreme amount of turnover in the first 2 years under Jim Harbaugh with players and coaches alike. So the Chargers are kind of in year 2 of that process of like finding who kind of fits the new culture and the new identity that Jim Harbaugh is trying to instill with the Chargers. And as we've seen, there have been ups and downs, and the Chargers have lost to some teams they shouldn't have so far, including, the 2-win Giants and the 3-win Commanders. So this is a super important game for them. But I think for the Raiders right now, what do you think the biggest story is? We talked a little bit before the show. Obviously, having a new offensive coordinator is a big deal. Chip Kelly gone. What are you kind of taking away from that?
Yeah, that's where it is right there. With Chip Kelly being gone, Greg Olson now actually being the play caller. He's going to be the play caller now for the second time in his career with the Silver and Black. He's been the OC 3 times, but the second time was with John Gruden, and John Gruden was the play caller. So I want to see what this offense looks like with Olson. It's not a whole lot you can do when you're in week 13, right? There's not like a bunch of wholesale changes you can make, but what I'm interested in is the rhyme and the reason. Is there going to be more emphasis on the run game, which is something Pete Carroll's been trying to send that message through the media and anyone who will listen multiple times throughout the season, need to run the ball more, It's so funny. When you think about this game, this is two coaches going up against each other that traditionally want to run the hell out of the ball. And I don't think that so far this season, either one of these coaches has ran the ball as much as they wanted to. But I know that Pete Carroll, as he said earlier, that, hey, Olson knows me. He's been with me. He was with me in Seattle. He knows what I like. So I'm interested to see if there's going to be a more emphasis on the run game. And the offensive line was horrendous last week against the Cleveland Browns, giving up 10 sacks. Is this offensive line going to perform better? Can they help protect Geno a little bit more? Can they get that run game going so they don't have to worry about Geno dropping back 40 plus times? Those are the kind of things I'm looking for. I don't think this team's also going to rattle off 6 wins in a row and be battling for a place in the playoffs at the last second. I'm not crazy and delusional like that, but I do think that it has a chance to look different. And Pete Carroll, more importantly, has a chance to prove to the powers that be that, yes, I can lead this team. I don't need to be a one-and-done coach.
Absolutely, right. And I think for the Chargers, obviously, protection-wise, they've dealt with a lot of the same stuff. And I think that's the hard thing, I guess, with Greg Olson taking over is how much different can the offense look if the offensive line plays like it did last week, right? Because it's just you're in an unwinnable situation there. And that has been with the Chargers losing Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, the kind of whole thing this season is like, yeah, you hope that Greg Roman could come up with a better way to protect Justin Herbert and still have a decent, moderate offense and be able to have some consistency from week to week. And it's so hard to parse the blame at that point. Is it Greg Roman not being able to schematically do what he can with the weapons they have, even though the offensive line is bad? Or is the offensive line so bad that we're just never going to know what this offense could have looked like if the offensive line and the protection was a little bit better? But I think for the Chargers, obviously big news this week, Omarion Hampton could have a matchup between the first two running backs taken in the 2025 draft. Has been, at least the window has been opened for the Chargers to be able to bring him back. And turns out he had a fractured ankle, not a sprained ankle, which is now why he's missed the last 7 weeks. And it'd be interesting to see if they can get him back for it. You're right, a running game that has been inconsistent. And I remember Greg Roman talking in his opening press conference. He's like, hey, can you imagine Justin Herbert with a great running game? And it's like, yeah, I'm still trying to, coach. I still want to see it and see what that looks like. But I mean, to be honest, this game is what it is for the Chargers. They have to win this game with the schedule that they have coming up. It's not that you're overlooking the Raiders. It's just that the margin for error is so thin that they have to find 3 wins the rest of the season against the Raiders, Texans, Eagles, Chiefs, Broncos, Cowboys. Like all those teams present different challenges to them. And for a team that's lost to, a 2-win team and a 3-win team coming off of a bye week, it's like you have all the advantages. The Raiders are going through their own turmoil. This would be kind of a devastating blow to what the Chargers are trying to build if they can't find a way to win a game that's as important as this.
And I'm sure that nobody thought that this was where the Chargers would be when they started the season, right? 3-0, 3 division wins. It's like, man, this is going to be the team to knock the Chiefs off and be that first division champ that's not named Kansas City in so long. And now that looks like it's going to be Denver. And like you said, the Chargers looking for 3 wins. So, yeah, and it's a division rival. We know it's, Chargers and Raiders. We also know it's Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh. So as much as, you can look at the record, you also have to throw them out the window. And, I know we'll talk about matchups coming up, but man, I mean, the way that the Chargers offensive line is giving up sacks and guys are getting to Justin Herbert, that's the same thing that the Raiders offensive line is doing, allowing guys to get to Geno Smith. So it could end up being one of these games where, the better defensive line is going to win this game, right? I mean, it's so wild because there's so many sacks. I think Geno's been sacked 41 times this season and Justin Herbert, 38 or something like that? Yeah. I mean, it's very, very similar. So, yeah, man, I mean, there's a lot to look at in this one. And obviously the Chargers are looking to pick up another W because, as you mentioned, they have to get that dub.
Yeah, it really is kind of as much of a must-win can be at this point for a 7-4 team because when you laid that egg against the Jacksonville Jaguars again, right, coming off of the first chance to kind of redeem yourself after the most embarrassing game in Chargers history, which was not 63-21 Raiders fans, because obviously that landed the Chargers Jim Harbaugh, so you kind of think back on that one favorably. It's definitely the 27-0 game, and for them to come out as flat as they did in that game, I think was just, it really kind of put in perspective, okay, where does this team kind of stack up against the best teams in the AFC? Because I don't think the Jaguars are in the echelon that some of these other teams are, and that's what you did against them on the road. Obviously, East Coast, trip and all that, but like they're coming off of a bye week. They played in the Hall of Fame game. It had been a really, really long time since this team did anything but kind of game plan and travel and go do something else that's not football. So Jim Harbaugh gave them a little bit extra rest instead of trying to maybe, drill in more practice time and try to maybe change some of the things they needed to change. But like, this is kind of a blueprint game for them a little bit, right? Like, I don't think if you're losing to this Raiders team with where you're at right now, like, what should be all the, encouragement Raiders need, right? Is like, you can kind of blow up the blueprint a little bit because it's like, how can you find progress even with the injuries that you've had, knowing that in a game like this, being the more rested team, the team who's been better so far this season, to let Pete Carroll and the Raiders do this to you?
Right, and that's what the Raiders are going to be looking to do. At this stage of the game, there's not the postseason in their future, but there are teams that they can, mess their playoff position up, or maybe help keep them out of the playoffs. And obviously, they're going to try to do that to every AFC West opponent that they can. And they end the season with the Kansas City Chiefs, but they've got the Chargers up this week. So I mean, those are a couple little I guess not even feel good moments, but just some goals that they can have when they're trying to find motivation and try to find that extra little umph and that little juice to get them over the hump when they need to find something to focus in on, so they're not focused in on vacation. Right. So again, there's a lot of work that they need to do, and it could start this Sunday against the Chargers.
Well, and it felt like the Chargers underestimated the Jaguars with the way they went about their offense protection plan, the game plan they had going in. It felt like they underestimated the Jaguars, and it cost them. If they do it again this week, it will probably cost them a spot in the playoffs. So that is what is riding on this game. We're going to talk about the exact matchups that are going to decide it and more in today's Locked On Crossover episode. First, though, I need to tell you that the NBA is back, and FanDuel is the #1 place and the official betting sponsor of the NBA. And FanDuel is the best, especially when the NBA rolls around, because you still have football, you have the NBA going on, and of course, my focus is mostly going to be on football. But even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's the one that's making the late push, and the odds are out. And they're holding steady for this game. The Chargers currently 9.5-point favorites at SoFi. It can't be understated how important this game is for them. But there's so much more with FanDuel than just betting favorites and betting money lines. You can bet first touchdown score, anytime touchdown scores. You can build live in-game parlays right now. And FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We have more to get into on this Locked On Chargers, Locked On Raiders crossover episode, and thank you to all the everydayers, especially on this holiday. We're recording the night before, but should have started with this. Happy Thanksgiving to all the everydayers and all those who make this possible. I mean, me and Q were just marveling before the show, like, hey, not a great time to work in sports around the holidays, but how could you ask for getting to do this and talking about the teams you root for, right? And especially in big games like the one this weekend for different reasons. But I do want to talk about the matchups, and I mean, I think you brought one up that might decide this game. It might be which quarterback stays standing the longest. Is that where you would start as far as what you think the biggest matchup is in this game?
There's no doubt about it. And I mean, I'll start with the Raiders and their offensive line first, just because their offensive line has been so bad. I mean, they've given up 20 sacks in the last 3 games, right? Yeah. So if you're the Chargers, if you're Khalil Mack and company, you're thinking, oh man, I'm about to have my Pro Bowl day. This is my Pro Bowl. This is my contract day, right? And that's what they call it when they see, a suspect offensive line, or they see an opponent that has a weakness. They say, this is going to be the game where I can stack my numbers. I can get my incentive game. So I'm sure Khalil Mack, who's had plenty of success against the Raiders, is thinking this is going to be his day. The Raiders are very compromised along that offensive line. They've got a backup at the left tackle position. Their center position is all messed up. Their right guard position is a backup. I mean, it's all over the place as far as that offensive line. So they're very, suspect when it comes to trying to protect Geno Smith. That's why I want to see if Greg Olson does something schematically with the offense to make it a little bit easier to help protect Geno more than what we've seen so far through 11 games in 12 weeks under Chip Kelly. So that's something to pay attention to. But yeah, the trenches, the offensive line versus the defensive line for both teams, really, because again, as I mentioned, Geno Smith's been sacked over 40 times. Justin Herbert's not too far behind him. So I know a guy like Maxx Crosby, who's got a nice little rivalry going on with Justin himself, is going to try to also get his incentive game up. He's also going to try to get to the quarterback and harass him as much as possible. And even though the Raiders are 2-9, the one guy who doesn't quit, the one guy who doesn't mail it in ever, the one guy who's not trying to get to the finish line is Maxx Crosby. He'll give it to you every second of the game. He wants to be out there 100% of the plays, and it doesn't matter how much they're down. He's finishing that game strong. So, yeah, I think that this game is really a lot's going to be told, and a lot's going to be seen by what the trenches do, what the offensive lines for both teams do against that opposing defensive line.
Yeah, and Maxx Crosby is one of those guys that even on like a division rival, like you have to have the respect for him, right? And honestly, like even in the last game, he was pretty quiet. I think he had 1 pressure in that game. Trey Pipkins, who got a lot of help against him, right, allowed 0 pressures in that game. But he wrecked the Chargers running game. Like he's such a well-rounded player. Maybe those parts of his game don't get brought up enough just because he is such a game wrecker in that sense, where it's like you can try to run at him, it doesn't work. You can try to run away from him, he'll chase it down from behind, right? Like it's hard to fully come up with a game plan to stop Maxx Crosby, and that is what the Chargers are going to be tasked to do this weekend. Like I think that is kind of the one thing that the Chargers kind of have going for them is it's like, and what's going to have to happen is this, like, you're going to have to allocate all of your resources to stopping Maxx Crosby, especially in pass protection. Can you win those other one-on-one matchups? They haven't shown week in and week out that those other guys can win those one-on-one matchups. So it will be a different look for the Chargers offensive line this week. It's looking as if Jamari Sawyer is going to be starting at left tackle for them for the first time this season. And it feels like the Chargers making a concession here as far as what they're going to do in the running game, because that was the only thing that really held them back from starting Jamari Sawyer, is they couldn't do the same things in the running game that they could do with, or thought they could do with, a Trevor Penning or an Austin Deculus. Those two guys being literally the worst players at their position in pass protection brought them something different in the running game. The Chargers are kind of flipping things during the bye week and going with the guy who has a better chance to protect Justin Herbert, and I am all for it. I'd say the other thing for me is the Chargers defense versus Brock Bowers, obviously, and Deion Henley, Derwin James, those guys, especially for Deion Henley, who hasn't been as much of an impact player in coverage so far this year. But Brock Bowers has never eclipsed 58 yards against the Chargers. He's averaged 48.7 yards per game against the Chargers, and all of those have been with Jesse Minter. If I'm Greg Olson, I mean, it's trying to get Ashton Jeanty and trying to get Brock Bowers the ball as much as I possibly can in space. Yep. And like, the Chargers have done a good job limiting it, but they're not a good tackling in space team. Like, they're a team that gives up some of the most yards after the catch this season in the NFL. And that is the matchup I'm looking for, because it's like, obviously you can't afford to get beat, but if you let them beat you with the players you know they have to get the ball to, I think that would be even worse.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's so funny that you went there. And obviously, I mean, Brock Bowers is one of the best players that the Raiders have. I mean, and they don't have a whole lot of them, right? I mean, they got Brock Bowers, they've got Ashton Jeanty, Maxx Crosby, right? And AJ Cole, their punter. I would say that those are the four guys that are the standouts, the blue chippers on the
foundational pieces. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so I look at, when I'm looking at another matchup to really focus in on, I'm looking at Keenan Allen versus the Raiders secondary. Because in some way, somehow, Keenan Allen, as good as he is, always seems to get open. He's always seems to be wide open whenever the Chargers need it the most, too. Right. And what I mean is, it's 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. All of a sudden, Keenan Allen's wide open 15 yards down the field. It's like, how in the hell did that guy get that wide open? But it just seems like he always finds a way, especially against the Raiders, to sit down in that secondary and in that zone coverage and be wide open. So it's going to be the secondary, how they match up with Keenan Allen, what kind of chess match Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, can play to try to make sure that he's not running wide open and able to make himself available for Justin Herbert. Because if Justin Herbert's given some protection, we all know that there's not a pass on that field that he can't make.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for Justin Herbert, obviously the one thing about him so far this year is turning the ball over at a rate that, far exceeds what he had last year. I mean, he had 3 picks all of last season, right? And he has 9 so far this year. So I think that for the Chargers, it's like, okay, you can't make it obvious that you're going to Keenan Allen, but I think the best way to do that in those situations, honestly, Q, is just Keenan Allen is going to kill you if you give them 3rd downs between 5 and 7 yards.
Yeah.
Like, if you give the Chargers those medium 3rd downs where it's just Justin Herbert can get the ball out quick enough, the protection can hold out just long enough, Keenan Allen, maybe until he's 37, is going to get you the exact 6 yards and exactly 0 yak after the catch and get exactly what he needs and go down right at the sticks, right? He can do that. And it's part of his game that's really just aged like fine wine. Where the Chargers get themselves in trouble is they're not getting to that, right? They're not getting to 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, where they're actually really, really good. The Chargers, more than pretty much any Chargers team that I've covered, is everything's so game flow dependent. Like, if you can get them out of what they want to do, if you can get up on them, if you can get them in those 3rd and long situations where the Raiders can pin their ears back and they know there is no threat of the run, you can't use Keenan Allen as much. Right. He won't be able to get out of his break by the time that you need to throw that ball. So I think that's what it is for the Chargers, staying in those situations, right? And then, for the Raiders, hey, how do we get them out of that so they can't use someone like Keenan Allen, who's such an advantage in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like keep him in third and long, and make him have to stretch the field and use someone else. And look, I mean, you got Ladd McConkey as well, who
Yeah.
obviously has nothing to shake a stick at. That's a hell of a wide receiver. Quentin Johnson, I like him a lot. I know he hasn't really turned into the great first round pick that he was when he was selected by Tom Telesco, but I mean, it's still another weapon that Justin Herbert could use. So the secondary is going to have their work cut out for him, especially when they've got Eric Stokes, who's really good, and then they've got a lot of question, a lot of youth, right? Caillou Blue Kelly still hasn't really evolved into that really good corner. Darian Porter, rookie, hasn't developed, hasn't got a ton of snaps last week. Caillou Blue Kelly had 26 snaps against Cleveland, and Darian Porter had 25. So they're kind of splitting reps right now, and Darnay Holmes has been in the slot. He's pretty suspect, giving up big plays. Sometimes Jeremy Chin will slide in and play the big nickel role. So there's, that to pay attention to. But for the most part, man, the secondary, it's got some questions. I think the best corner that they have right now is Eric Stokes. So anyone who's not being guarded by Eric Stokes is definitely going to be under the microscope. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of attention pointed their way, and the ball is going to come their way early and often.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up Quentin Johnston because he was the Chargers' #1 receiver through, a month and a half so far this year. And they've kind of gotten away with that. Or gotten away from it. So I wonder if that is something where they try to get him more involved, get the ball out on the perimeter, make the defense kind of have to adjust to, okay, well, if we keep playing him outside one-on-one like this and giving him these short passes, we can't keep giving up 6-7 yards on first down. So I think it'd be a smart thing for the Chargers to try to exploit. They just have to give Justin Herbert enough time to get rid of the football. But that is one of the big keys for this game. We're getting into the biggest 3 things the Chargers and Raiders have to do to win this game and more in today's Locked On Crossover episode. It is rivalry week. It's Locked On Chargers. It's Locked On Raiders. I am Dan Talk Sports. Daniel Wade here, host of Locked On Chargers. And as you know, your boy Q at your boy Q254. Very interesting game with the Chargers having to kind of grit their teeth through it and the Raiders playing for something differently. And honestly, sometimes the most dangerous teams are the teams that have nothing to lose. And I think honestly, Q, I might put the Raiders in that box right now, especially even when you're talking about like the cornerback and kind of them phasing some guys in and out there. It's like those sound like guys who have basically a starting job to potentially win. And those guys are dangerous and are going to be trying to make the one big play that stands out to maybe keep themselves on that 2026 Raiders roster. A hungry team is a dangerous team. And I do want to get into the biggest 3 things that each of these teams has to do to get the victory on Sunday. Where would you start?
I mean, I'd start with the protection. Geno Smith's got to be protected. I mean, this guy got sacked 10 times last week, got sacked 4 times against the Cowboys, got sacked 6 times against the Denver Broncos. I mean, that's 20 sacks in 3 games, right?
Yeah.
That just can't happen. Khalil Mack cannot be on Geno Smith's back. Geno's already rushing the ball. He's already playing a little guarded. He's, a little uncertain of himself when he's in the pocket because he feels like the rush is coming. So they've got to do a better job of protecting him. First and foremost, if the Raiders are going to have any chance, he's got to get, I would say 3 sacks or less. I would like to see it be around 2, but if they go over, if the Chargers get more than 3 sacks on Geno Smith, I think it's going to be a long day at the office. That'll be the first thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the Chargers, to their credit, I mean, one thing they've been pretty good against this season is more immobile quarterbacks, whether it's Geno, whether it's Tua, whether it was Cam Ward, guys that aren't really notorious scramblers. Those are the guys. The Jackson Darts have given them trouble. Bo Nix gave them some issues. Patrick Mahomes always has their number in that regard. Jaden Daniels too. So I do think that is something for the Chargers that they have to be able to take advantage of, and whoever does take advantage of it might end up winning this game. But I also have that as well, where it's just win in the trenches. Like that's the number one thing. If you look back at that 35-6 whooping the Chargers took in Jacksonville last week, like that's the worst part of it, is like just going out there and being a Jim Harbaugh team and having Jim Harbaugh after the game saying that you got out physical. And there's a little back and forth. I mean, Khalil Mack said himself, he said, if you didn't tell me that came out of coach's mouth, I wouldn't have believed that you said it. And in his words, I have no BITCH in my blood is what he ended up saying there. And I mean, I believe him when he says it. And I think this was a big bye week for him to be able to, get that message across to this team. Right. And he has to, because the Chargers dominated in time of possession, 38-22. If the Raiders can do that against you, why wouldn't they, man? Like, keep Justin Herbert on the sideline, keep that offense on the field. That means something's going right with Ashton Jeanty too, and they're being able to kind of chew this game away. Chargers were leading in time of possession going into the Jaguars game, and they just got whooped up front, like just playing out on both sides of the ball. If that happens, and they can't protect Justin Herbert and they can't stop the run, they will lose this game. I'll just go out and say it right there. Where would you go with your next one?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. Is Ashton Jeanty's got to go over 100 yards. He's got to be a 25 guy. And what I mean by that is 20 carries and 5 catches. Right? He needs to have at least 25 touches in this game. He's only carried the rock 23 times. That's the most carries he's ever had in the game in his career so far is 23. Now he has been getting involved lately in the passing game, so that's cool. But whatever they do, they need to get this guy at least 25 touches. And I think he needs to go over 100 yards on the ground. He has it in him. We talked to him on Wednesday, and he said, my body feels great. You know why his body feels great? Because he hasn't been used that much, right? He hasn't been the wear and tear hasn't been put on his body because they just haven't used him for one reason or the other. Some is because the game gets out of control. Others is just because Chip Kelly wasn't running the ball and wasn't feeding him the way that I thought that they should feed him. So Ashton Jeanty's got to be like that old school, Pac-Man game where he's going after the pellets, boom, power pellet, go, right? He's got to be that dude. I mean, he's got to be who he was at Boise State, show why they took him number 6 overall. And especially if Hampton's out there as well, that'd be a fun little back and forth between the top 2 running backs drafted in this last draft class. But I think Ashton Jeanty's got to go over 100 yards for sure.
Well, I think especially since like Jeanty, in the most professional of ways, basically said like, hey, I need to get the ball more. Like I can be effective if I'm getting the ball and getting more touches. It's hard to get into a rhythm to do these other things. If you're getting the ball 13 times in a game, it's hard to make your imprint. And like that is, a game flow is a big part of that, right? Like game flow is a huge part of that. It's hard to run the ball if you're down, 15 to 20 points. Like that's just, it is what it is. But I honestly wondered, going into this game was just like, what is the kind of plan with Ashton Jeanty? Because it's, at the same time, like you want to know that your first round pick is, worth the first round pick and know what you have going forward. At the same time, does it make sense to give him 180 touches down the last 6 games of the season in a season that you might not be able to use those touches in meaningful games? Does that make sense? I kind of wondered that to a certain extent.
Yeah, for sure. It does make sense. Like you don't want to just wear him out. You don't want him to get, 30 touches a game or whatever. I get that, but man, I mean, you just got to show that you have a plan with them. And so far, I haven't seen the plan. And you drafted him number 6. I mean, you drafted him number 6 overall. You didn't draft him to be a hood ornament, right? You drafted him to go out there and be effective and be reliable and be a guy that you can lean on and, make it easier for Brock Bowers. If Jeanty's running, guess what? All attention is not on Brock Bowers, and that's your best weapon that you have. So then you got a nice 1-2 punch. They've got to show that they know how to use him and that they've got a plan for him. That's what I'd like to see, and they haven't shown that yet.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there because it's just like you kind of need the proof of concept, and like that is what these last 6 games are going to be about for the Raiders. Is, hey, what parts of this can we take with us going into next season? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of change, but hey, if we can show with Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty, we can get a 1-2 punch that even in an imperfect offense is able to give you some special moments week in and week out. That feels like hope. That feels like something that at least, the next offensive coordinator, whoever that is in 2026, can build on and make it honestly an attractive situation, right? Like maybe that's part of it too, is wanting to be an attractive situation for a prospective offensive coordinator. So I think that's super interesting. And I think for the Chargers, it's winning the battle on 3rd down. And you can't do that unless you're stopping Ashton Jeanty on 1st and 2nd down, right? And not letting him run the ball at you. The last game, the Chargers converted only 25% of their 3rd downs while allowing the Jags to convert 50% defensively. The Raiders, if they're stuck in 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2s all days, can convert 50% of their 3rd downs against you. They're not going to do that on 3rd and 10 plus with that offensive line. They're just not. But that is, you have to win on 3rd down. But the only way you're going to give your rushers those prime opportunities if you can get them in 3rd and long. If you can't, and the Chargers were having a hard time last game getting to 3rd down sometimes, right? Not letting the Jaguars get a 1st down on 2nd down. And that is why the Chargers had 0 sacks. The Chargers had 12 sacks in 3 games going into that one. 0 sacks on Trevor Lawrence, which is a big reason why they lost 35-6. So I think winning the battle on 3rd down is another big one.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And finally, for me, I mean, for the Raiders to be able to pull off a victory, it's all about the turnovers. They can't turn the ball over, and they got to find a way to turn the Chargers over. I mean, it's just that simple. And we know that that's for most teams win the turnover battle. The Raiders have found a way to generate some turnovers, create some turnovers the last couple of games. It hasn't resulted in victories, but the offense has taking the field in, shorter fields in a better position. And with the offense that's suspect like the Raiders is, they need the best field position they could possibly get. So they've got to eliminate the turnovers. Geno can't throw a bunch of interceptions like he did against the Chargers the last time they played. First play of the game, interception, and that just kind of got the ball rolling for Geno in the negative way. He's got to be able to protect the ball, not be so predictable where he's going with it, and make sure that when he's throwing it to the guys in Raider uniforms and not the guys wearing the Chargers colors.
The Chargers are going to have some mean uniforms out there on Sunday. I mean, those all navies to me are tough. I mean, as tough as it gets. So don't embarrass yourself in those uniforms. And it's interesting, too, because even though Geno got picked off 3 times in the first matchup, the Chargers really struggled to put the Raiders away in that one, where it was just like, man, if the Raiders didn't shoot themselves in the foot, they'd be right in this with a chance to win the game. And obviously a lot has happened between then and now. But at the same time, I still think obviously for the Chargers, who have already turned it over more than they did in 2024, that has to be huge. And if you the recipe for losing to a team that's worse than you, it starts with turning the ball over and losing that turnover battle. But this is the most important thing for the Chargers until otherwise noted. It's get off to a fast start. Maybe as much as anyone in the league, the Chargers need to get up on you and kind of dictate that they can be multidimensional offensively. If you pigeonhole them into dropping Justin Herbert back 40 times in this game, that's 40 opportunities for Maxx Crosby to drive him into the dirt. Protect your dude. You can't do the Chargers just haven't shown they can effectively do that if they get behind in games. They are not a team that's built to have consistent, obvious passing situations. They're just not. Neither of these teams are, right? Neither of these teams are. They need their running games to be a part of it. Your running game can't be a big part of the game plan if there's 3 minutes left in the third quarter and you're down by 10 plus. That's just not the way it works in the NFL. So I think it's important for both teams, but I think the one thing that this Chargers team, who's beat good teams and lost to bad teams, has shown us all year is, man, if you get up on them and you force them into some of these situations where they have to protect Justin Herbert and send 5-on-5 out there to do it, it's not good. And it's not a good recipe for the Chargers to get a win, and a great recipe for an upset for the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'm excited. I'm excited for Thanksgiving tomorrow. Thank you to everyone and happy Thanksgiving to you and all of your families. That is one thing that me and your boy Q are both super thankful for. We don't have this job unless we have the everydayers helping us, helping make us the #1 sports podcast network. So Q, I know you're thankful for everyone. Have a happy Thanksgiving, man. I know I'm excited to eat.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You do the same, man. It's always fun to get together, man. It's gonna be fun to see these two battle it out on Sunday at SoFi Stadium.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fun for you guys with no pressure, whatever. The Chargers, the only thing is their season might be over if they can't pull it off, trying to potentially ruin a Thanksgiving weekend. And as for someone with as many scars as I have watching this Chargers team, no game is a given. Any given Sunday is a real thing. But make sure you guys never miss the show by subscribing and following for free on the Locked On Chargers and Locked On Raiders YouTube channels and listening wherever you get your podcast from. You can find me on Twitter at DanTalkSports and your boy Q at your boy Q254. We are definitely excited to see what happens in this game. Make sure you guys follow us on all of our social media as well. But more than anything, enjoy yourself, have a great time, and have a happy Thanksgiving.